The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Summary and analysis by Brevreds. Introduction. Power is a game, whether you're a ruler of an empire, a CEO, or simply someone trying to navigate the social jungle. Knowing how to play it can make the difference between success and failure, between rising through the ranks or getting crushed underfoot. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene isn't just a guide for the ruthless or manipulative. It's a roadmap for anyone who wants to understand the dynamics of influence, control, and survival. The rules of power aren't always obvious, but once you know them, you'll see them in action everywhere. These laws aren't about forcing your way to the top with brute strength or loud declarations. In fact, many of them are about subtlety, patience, and strategic thinking. If you're loud, you draw attention to yourself, sometimes the wrong kind. If you act too quickly, you tip your hand and make your next move obvious to others. Greene draws from history's great manipulators, thinkers, and leaders to craft lessons that are equally relevant today. This retelling expands on the key stories behind each law to make them even more engaging and packed with practical insights. We'll dig deep into historical examples and vivid case studies so you can see how these principles played out in real life and how they can apply to you today. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Imagine you're Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister of France under King Louis XIV in the mid-1600s. You've worked hard to rise to the top, overseeing the kingdom's finances, and things seem to be going well. You're a man of culture, a patron of the arts, and admired by many. Your position makes you feel invincible, and with that confidence, you decide to host an extravagant party to impress the king. This wasn't just any party. It was the party of the century. Fouquet's Château, Vaux-de-Vicomte, was a masterpiece in itself. The gardens were designed by the most famous landscape artist of the time, André Lenotre. There were fountains that spouted water in perfect arcs, hundreds of servants dressed in the finest attire, and performances from the best poets and playwrights in the land. Fireworks lit up the sky. Guests drank the best wine France had to offer, and the tables overflowed with luxurious foods. It was a spectacle meant to dazzle. But the problem was, it dazzled too much. Fouquet wanted to show King Louis XIV that he was capable of managing wealth and resources at an unmatched level. What he didn't realize was that, instead of impressing the king, he humiliated him. Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, prided himself on being the center of attention, the source of all power. Seeing someone, especially his own finance minister, outshine him in such a public and opulent display was too much for the king to handle. Louis didn't show his anger at the party. Instead, he smiled, complimented Fouquet on the success of the event, and even engaged in pleasant conversation. Fouquet was pleased, believing that his strategy had worked. But behind the scenes, the king had already made a decision. A few weeks later, Fouquet was arrested by royal decree, accused of embezzlement, and sentenced to life in prison. His downfall was swift and brutal. The party that was meant to elevate him was the very thing that destroyed him. The lesson? When you are in the presence of those more powerful than you, do not overstep. It's easy to believe that by showing off your talents, you'll earn respect or favor. But in reality, drawing too much attention to yourself, especially if you make your superiors look inferior, is a dangerous move. Your master needs to feel secure in their power, and it's your job to help them feel that way. Instead of flaunting your brilliance, help your superior shine. Be the steady, reliable support they need, but always stay just a step behind. This ensures you maintain a position of influence without threatening their ego. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn to use enemies. It's natural to think that friends are the safest people to trust. After all, they've been there for you through thick and thin, right? But friendships are complicated, especially when power is involved. Friends can grow envious, complacent, or expect too much in return. Sometimes, they let their guard down because they know you'll forgive their mistakes. But enemies, they're different. They have something to prove. They're driven by a need to outdo you, to prove their worth. And that can be exactly what you need. Consider the story of Julius Caesar. When he returned to Rome as the undisputed leader, he had many decisions to make about who would be in his inner circle. His old friend Brutus was a natural choice. Brutus had been loyal, trustworthy, and stood by Caesar in difficult times. But instead of showering Brutus with all the power and responsibility, Caesar made a surprising decision. He appointed his old rival, Marcus Antonius, better known as Mark Antony, to a high-ranking position in his administration. Antony had once been a fierce enemy of Caesar, often opposing him in political matters. Many were shocked by Caesar's decision. But Caesar knew something critical about human nature. Antony would work harder and more diligently as an ally than Brutus ever could. Why? Because Antony needed to prove himself. He had once been an enemy, and now that he had been given a second chance, he wasn't going to let it slip away. He would be too afraid of losing Caesar's trust, so he would do everything in his power to keep it. On the other hand, Brutus, the old friend, grew increasingly resentful of Caesar's rise to power. Caesar's confidence in Antony only deepened Brutus's envy. Despite their long history, Brutus felt sidelined, like he wasn't receiving the recognition he deserved. In time, this resentment festered into betrayal, leading to one of history's most famous assassinations. Et tu, Brute? Caesar's final words, as Brutus plunged a knife into him, became the ultimate reminder that friends can sometimes be more dangerous than enemies. The truth is, enemies can be more reliable in certain situations because they are motivated to prove their loyalty, while friends may expect too much or become envious. People who were once against you often make the best allies because they know what's at stake. They will work harder to maintain your trust because they know they don't have it automatically. Lesson: don't assume that friendship equals safety. Sometimes it's those who once opposed you that will be your most loyal and hardworking allies. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Think about the classic con artists of history. What makes them so effective? It's not brute force or overwhelming charisma, it's misdirection. People are naturally suspicious, especially when they sense that someone might have an ulterior motive. The more transparent you are about your goals, the easier it becomes for others to block you or outmaneuver you. But if you can keep your intentions hidden, your enemies are left in the dark, unsure of your next move. One of the greatest masters of concealment was none other than Otto von Bismarck, the German chancellor who orchestrated the unification of Germany in the late 19th century. Bismarck was known for his diplomatic brilliance, but even more for his ability to hide his true intentions. He understood that in the volatile political landscape of Europe, showing his hand too early would invite opposition. Instead, he cultivated an image of unpredictability, making sure that no one could ever be quite sure what he was planning. In the 1860s, Bismarck's goal was to unite the fragmented German states into one powerful empire under Prussian rule. But Austria, a dominant European power at the time, stood in his way. Bismarck knew that if he openly declared his intentions, Austria would crush Prussia before the unification could even begin. So, he played a careful game of deception. First, Bismarck publicly aligned himself with Austria, pretending to support their interests, while quietly building up Prussia's military strength behind the scenes. He attended diplomatic meetings, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, all the while knowing that he was preparing for war. When the time was right, and Austria least expected it, Bismarck struck with precision. The result was the Austro-Prussian War, which ended in a decisive Prussian victory and paved the way for German unification. The brilliance of Bismarck's strategy wasn't just in his military planning, it was in the way he kept his true intentions hidden until the last possible moment. Austria believed that they had a loyal ally in Prussia, right up until the moment the attack came. By then it was too late to stop him. The lesson here is clear. If you reveal your intentions too early, you give others the chance to block you. But if you conceal your true plans and keep people guessing, you maintain the element of surprise. This doesn't mean being dishonest or manipulative in every situation. It means understanding the value of silence and patience. Lesson: keep your intentions hidden. Let people think they know your plans, but always keep them guessing about your true goals. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. We all know that person who talks too much. Whether it's in meetings, social settings, or even casual conversations, they can't seem to stop. And what happens? The more they talk, the more they give away. It's not just about sharing information, sometimes it's about giving away power. The more words you use, the more opportunities you give people to figure you out, to twist your words, or even to use them against you. One historical figure who mastered the art of saying little was Louis XIV of France. Known as the Sun King, Louis understood that his power wasn't just about military might or wealth, it was about image. He kept an aura of mystery around him, and part of that mystery was built by carefully controlling his words. At court, Louis XIV was known for speaking very little during official meetings and gatherings. He would listen intently as his advisors and ministers debated, but when it came time for him to speak, he would offer only a few well-chosen words. His silence created an air of authority and made people hang on to his every word. Because he said so little, those around him had to work harder to interpret his thoughts and intentions. This gave Louis an incredible amount of power. People projected their own desires, fears, and hopes onto him, all because he left so much unsaid. The effect was profound. Courtiers would spend hours analyzing even the smallest comment from the king, trying to figure out what he meant. And because he rarely spoke, when he did say something, it carried enormous weight. Louis's strategy of speaking less made him seem wiser, more thoughtful, and, most importantly, more powerful. Contrast that with the Duke of York, later James II of England. Known for his long-winded speeches and constant need to justify his actions, James often spoke so much that people lost respect for him. His excessive talking made him appear weak and indecisive. When he was eventually deposed in the Glorious Revolution, part of the reason was his inability to control his own narrative. He had given away too much of his own power by always trying to explain himself. In today's world, this law is just as relevant. Whether you're in a business meeting, negotiating a deal, or even just having a conversation, remember that sometimes less is more. The less you say, the less likely you are to be misunderstood, and the more control you have over the situation. It's about creating an aura of mystery, allowing others to project their ideas onto you, and making every word you say count. Lesson: speak less, listen more. The less you reveal, the more powerful you seem. Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Reputation is everything. You can have power, wealth, and influence, but if your reputation is tarnished, all of it can crumble in an instant. In the world of power, your reputation is like armor. If it's intact, you're untouchable. If it's damaged, you become vulnerable. Consider the tale of P.T. Barnum, the famous American showman and businessman. Barnum built an empire on his reputation as an entertainer and master of the bizarre. He understood that in the world of show business, reputation was everything. He carefully crafted his image, making sure that the public saw him as a man who could deliver extraordinary, once-in-a-lifetime spectacles. And he wasn't shy about using tricks to maintain his reputation. In one famous instance, Barnum faced stiff competition from a rival showman, who had an equally impressive collection of oddities and attractions. Rather than attack his rival directly or launch a smear campaign, Barnum decided to play a subtler game. He sent his employees to spread rumors in the towns where his rival was performing, claiming that Barnum's rival had stolen many of his best attractions from him. The rumors weren't necessarily true, but they didn't have to be. Barnum understood that reputation is based on perception, not reality. The result? Crowds began to doubt the authenticity of Barnum's rival, and ticket sales for the rival show plummeted. Barnum's own shows, meanwhile, continued to thrive. His reputation as the original and most authentic showman remained intact, while his competitor's name was tarnished. This story illustrates the importance of defending your reputation at all costs. Barnum wasn't just protecting his business. He was protecting his entire persona, the very thing that allowed him to succeed. He understood that in the eyes of the public, once your reputation is damaged, it's nearly impossible to repair. People will believe what they want to believe, and rumors spread faster than the truth. Today, in the age of social media, reputation is more fragile than ever. A single tweet or post can destroy years of hard work in an instant. That's why it's critical to guard your reputation fiercely. Don't let false accusations or rumors go unchecked. Respond quickly and decisively to any threats, and always be aware of how you're being perceived by others. Your reputation is your most valuable asset. Without it, you're vulnerable. Lesson: protect your reputation at all costs. Once it's damaged, it's hard to repair. Law 6. Court attention at all costs. If there's one thing that guarantees power, it's attention. In a world where people are bombarded with information, being noticed is half the battle. You can be the smartest, most talented person in the room, but if no one knows you exist, it won't matter. The trick is to always be in the spotlight, no matter what it takes. Take the story of Salvador Dali, the eccentric Spanish painter known for his surrealist masterpieces. Dali understood that in the world of art, talent alone wasn't enough. To become truly famous, he needed to be unforgettable. And so, Dali didn't just create art, he created a persona that demanded attention. Dali's appearances in public were as much a part of his art as his paintings. He would show up to events wearing outrageous costumes, like a deep-sea diving suit, or carrying an anteater on a leash. He gave bizarre, rambling interviews that left people scratching their heads, and his mustache became an iconic symbol of his eccentricity. Dali knew that by being outrageous, he could capture the world's attention, and as long as people were talking about him, his art would continue to sell. But Dali didn't stop there. He once organized an event where he claimed to be giving a live performance of his creative process. As the crowd gathered in anticipation, Dali sat down at a table, dipped a piece of bread in ink, and began scribbling nonsensical lines on a piece of paper. The audience was confused, but Dali didn't care. He had their attention. And that was the point. Even when people didn't understand what he was doing, they couldn't stop watching. Dali had mastered the art of courting attention, and it made him one of the most famous and successful artists of the 20th century. The lesson here is that attention is power. If you can't get people to notice you, you can't influence them. But once you have their attention, you have control over what they see, hear, and think. Don't be afraid to be bold, eccentric, or even controversial if it means getting noticed. In the world of power, obscurity is your enemy. Lesson: court attention at all costs. Without it, you're invisible. Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. One of the most effective ways to amass power is to let others do the heavy lifting for you while you reap the rewards. This might sound devious, but it's one of the oldest strategies in the book. Why spend your time and energy when you can get others to work for you? The trick is to make sure that, in the end, you're the one who gets the recognition. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, often credited with inventing the light bulb. While Edison was a brilliant inventor, he didn't do it all by himself. In fact, many of the inventions attributed to him were actually the work of his team of engineers and scientists. Edison had a knack for surrounding himself with talented people and getting them to work on his ideas. He would provide the vision, but they would do the actual work of developing and refining the inventions. One of Edison's most famous collaborators was Nikola Tesla, a brilliant inventor in his own right. Tesla worked for Edison for a time, helping him solve some of the technical challenges that arose in the development of electricity. But while Tesla did much of the groundbreaking work, it was Edison who received the credit. Edison understood the importance of being the public face of innovation, and he wasn't afraid to take credit for the work of others if it meant enhancing his own reputation. This approach allowed Edison to build a massive empire and become one of the most famous inventors in history. Tesla, on the other hand, struggled to achieve the same level of recognition and financial success, despite his contributions to many of the technologies we use today. The lesson here is not to exploit others but to understand the value of delegation. Surround yourself with talented people, let them do what they do best, and then position yourself to take the credit. This doesn't mean you shouldn't acknowledge the efforts of those who help you. It means understanding that in the game of power, being seen as the one who made it all happen is key. Lesson: delegate, but take the credit. It's the quickest way to build power. Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. In the game of power, you want to be in control. One of the most effective ways to maintain control is to make others come to you. When you make the first move, you give up the initiative. But when you make others come to you, you set the terms of the engagement, whether in business, negotiations, or social interactions. You dictate the pace, the environment, and the direction things go in. A perfect example of this strategy in action comes from the legendary Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War. One of Sun Tzu's key principles was that you should never fight on terrain chosen by your enemy. Instead, you should lure them onto ground where you have the advantage. By choosing the battlefield, you ensure that the conditions are favorable to you. In one of his most famous campaigns, Sun Tzu found himself facing a much larger and better equipped army. Rather than march his troops into battle and risk heavy losses, Sun Tzu retreated to a nearby fortress and waited. The enemy, eager for a decisive victory, pursued Sun Tzu, only to find themselves in unfamiliar and hostile territory. Once they arrived, Sun Tzu's forces, well prepared and entrenched, launched a surprise attack, utterly destroying the larger army. By making his enemy come to him, Sun Tzu had flipped the power dynamics in his favor. This law applies just as much in modern business and politics as it does in warfare. When you make others come to you, they must adapt to your terms. You can set the agenda, define the rules of the game, and create an environment where you hold the upper hand. One of the simplest ways to make others come to you is by offering something they want, a product, a service, or even your approval. The key is to make your offer so enticing that they can't resist, but ensure that they're the ones chasing you. Take the story of Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors. Buffett rarely chases after deals. Instead, he creates an aura of exclusivity around his investment firm, Berkshire Hathaway. Entrepreneurs and business leaders know that if they want Buffett's investment, they must come to him. By sitting back and waiting for the best opportunities to present themselves, Buffett ensures that he's always in a position of strength when negotiating deals. Lesson: position yourself in a way that others come to you. When they do, you control the terms. Law 9: win through your actions, never through argument. In the world of power, actions speak louder than words. You can argue your point all day, but in the end, what matters is what you do. Arguments, even if you win them, often leave behind a trail of resentment and ill will. People are rarely convinced by verbal confrontation. Instead, they are more likely to dig their heels in and defend their position out of pride. But when you demonstrate your point through action, it becomes undeniable. A classic example of this law comes from the French general Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was a master tactician, but he understood that in the heat of battle, words meant little. His strategy was to win by doing. Rather than waste time in debates with his generals or trying to convince them of his plans, Napoleon would simply act, often with boldness and decisiveness. His military victories silenced any dissent, and his results spoke for themselves. One of his most famous victories was the Battle of Austerlitz, where he faced a combined army of Russians and Austrians. Napoleon's forces were outnumbered, and his generals expressed concern. But instead of arguing or trying to convince them with words, Napoleon enacted a brilliant plan that involved feigning weakness to lure the enemy into a vulnerable position. Once the enemy took the bait, Napoleon's forces launched a devastating counterattack, securing one of the most decisive victories in his career. His actions silenced all doubts. Another story that highlights this law involves Galileo Galilei, the Italian astronomer. In Galileo's time, the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun was highly controversial, and the Church was staunchly opposed to it. Rather than engage in endless arguments with the authorities, Galileo focused on proving his theories through observation and experimentation. His invention of the telescope allowed him to demonstrate that the planets, including Earth, did indeed orbit the sun. The evidence was undeniable, and while it didn't prevent Galileo from facing persecution, it solidified his place in history as one of the fathers of modern science. In everyday life, this law can be applied in both personal and professional settings. Instead of getting caught up in arguments or trying to persuade others with words, focus on action. Let your results do the talking. Whether you're in business, relationships, or any area where influence is key, winning through action leaves no room for doubt or debate. Lesson: don't waste time on arguments. Demonstrate your power and influence through actions, and let results speak for themselves. Law 10: infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Power is contagious, but so is failure. The people you surround yourself with have a significant impact on your own life and success. If you associate with those who are constantly complaining, unlucky, or perpetually down on their luck, you risk being dragged into their negativity. This doesn't mean you should turn your back on friends in need, but you must be selective about who you allow into your inner circle. One of the most striking historical examples of this law in action comes from the story of King Louis XV of France and his infamous mistress, Madame de Pompadour. Madame de Pompadour was known for her charm, intelligence, and wit, and for a time, she was the most powerful woman in France. However, as she aged, her influence began to wane. Desperate to hold on to her power, she surrounded herself with a circle of advisors who were equally desperate and fearful of losing their positions at court. These advisors were known for their constant scheming and backstabbing, and their negative energy began to infect Madame de Pompadour's decision-making. As a result, Madame de Pompadour's once sharp political instincts dulled, and she became embroiled in a series of bad decisions and failed alliances. The negativity of those around her began to affect her own fortunes, and her once golden reputation was tarnished. Eventually, she lost the favor of the king, and was forced to live out her final years in relative obscurity. In contrast, consider the story of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States. Jefferson was known for surrounding himself with some of the most brilliant and forward-thinking minds of his time, including James Madison and John Adams. By associating with people who were ambitious, positive, and full of new ideas, Jefferson was able to maintain his own energy and enthusiasm for progress. His circle of friends and advisors pushed him to achieve greater things, and their positive influence helped him shape the future of America. The lesson is clear: surround yourself with people who uplift you, inspire you, and bring positivity into your life. Avoid those who are constantly complaining, unlucky, or stuck in negative patterns. Their bad fortune can rub off on you, and before you know it, you'll find yourself caught in the same downward spiral. Lesson: stay away from negative influences. Surround yourself with those who bring positivity and success. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Power often stems from the control and influence you have over others. One of the most effective ways to maintain that power is to make yourself indispensable. When people rely on you for their success, protection, or resources, they can't afford to get rid of you. This is how you stay in control, by making yourself the source of their needs, without them ever realizing they're trapped in your web. Take the example of King Louis XVI of France, often referred to as the Spider King, for his intricate web of political schemes. Louis XVI was a master at keeping people dependent on him. One of his most famous tactics involved handing out favors and rewards to nobles in exchange for their loyalty. However, these favors always came with strings attached. The nobles found themselves in situations where they could not act independently of the king, ensuring that their power was tied to his. One of Louis XVI's key allies was Charles the Bold, the Duke of Burgundy. Initially, Charles was an ambitious and powerful rival to Louis XVI, but through a series of carefully crafted treaties and agreements, Louis managed to make Charles reliant on him for military and political support. In one instance, Louis offered military assistance to Charles in exchange for control over a strategically important region. Charles, eager for the help, agreed, not realizing that by doing so, he was making himself dependent on the king. Over time, Charles became less of a threat and more of a pawn in Louis XVI's game of power. Louis XVI's ability to keep people dependent on him wasn't limited to political alliances. He also cultivated relationships with merchants, bankers, and foreign dignitaries, ensuring that they too needed his support to thrive. By positioning himself as the gatekeeper to resources and influence, Louis XVI created a network of dependency that kept him in control of France's power dynamics for decades. In a modern context, think about your workplace or social circles. If you're the go-to person for solving problems or providing resources, people will naturally gravitate toward you. They'll need you, and as long as they need you, you have power over them. The key is to offer just enough to make them reliant, but not so much that they can stand on their own without you. Lesson: keep people dependent on you to maintain power. If they can't function without you, you remain indispensable. Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. When it comes to gaining power, appearing trustworthy can be one of the most effective strategies. But being too honest or too generous all the time can backfire. Instead, practice selective honesty and well-timed acts of generosity. These unexpected gestures will disarm your targets, making them lower their guard and become more vulnerable to your influence. One of the greatest examples of this law in action is from the career of con artist Victor Lustig. Lustig was infamous for his scams, including his most audacious one, selling the Eiffel Tower. Yes, you read that correctly, he sold the Eiffel Tower. Lustig was a master manipulator, and he understood the power of selective honesty. To pull off his Eiffel Tower con, Lustig posed as a French government official and invited several scrap metal dealers to a secret meeting, telling them that the Eiffel Tower was being dismantled due to maintenance costs. Lustig's demeanor was professional, his paperwork appeared legitimate, and his story was plausible enough to be believed. However, Lustig added one crucial detail that sealed the deal: he confided in one of the scrap metal dealers, pretending to share a personal secret. The sale of the Eiffel Tower was a corrupt government deal, and Lustig hinted that he was open to receiving a bribe to secure the contract. This moment of apparent honesty convinced the dealer that Lustig was trustworthy, and as a result, the dealer handed over the money. Lustig disappeared with the cash, leaving the dealer humiliated and unable to report the scam for fear of exposing his own bribe. Lustig's selective honesty disarmed his victim, making him believe that Lustig was on his side. This is the essence of the law. When you use honesty or generosity strategically, people let their guard down and become easier to manipulate. In everyday life, think about how a well-timed act of generosity or a moment of sincere honesty can disarm someone. Whether it's offering a favor or admitting to a small mistake, these acts can create a sense of trust and lower the defenses of those around you. But remember, the key is to use these tactics sparingly and strategically. Too much honesty or generosity, and you risk giving away your power. Lesson: use selective honesty and generosity to disarm others and gain influence. A well-placed act of kindness or truth can be a powerful weapon in the game of power. Law 13, when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. People are more likely to help you when it benefits them. Appeals to mercy, friendship, or gratitude rarely produce the same results as appeals to self-interest. When asking for help, always frame your request in a way that shows the other person how they stand to gain something from helping you. A historical example of this law can be seen in the story of Catherine the Great of Russia. Catherine was a highly ambitious ruler who understood the value of appealing to self-interest. In 1762, when Catherine's husband, Peter III, was unpopular and ruling Russia with a heavy hand, Catherine saw an opportunity to seize power. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed the support of key military and political figures to pull off the coup. Instead of appealing to their loyalty or gratitude, Catherine framed her request for help in terms of what they would gain from supporting her. She promised them titles, land, and power if they backed her bid for the throne. By appealing to their self-interest, Catherine was able to rally a significant force behind her, and the coup was a success. Peter III was overthrown, and Catherine became the Empress of Russia, one of the most powerful rulers of her time. In modern times, think about how you ask for favors or assistance. Do you frame your requests in a way that highlights what's in it for the other person? Whether you're negotiating a business deal or asking a colleague for help on a project, showing the other party how they will benefit is far more effective than relying on goodwill or gratitude. Lesson: when seeking help, always appeal to the other person's self-interest. Show them how helping you benefits them, and you'll be much more likely to get what you need. Law 14, pose as a friend, work as a spy. To gain power, you need information about people, situations, and opportunities. The best way to gather this information is to pose as a friend while secretly observing and listening. By pretending to be on someone's side, you can gather the intel you need without arousing suspicion. This law has been used by spies and diplomats for centuries, but one of the most famous examples comes from the life of Frederick the Great, the 18th century king of Prussia. Frederick was known for his cunning and intelligence, but one of his greatest weapons was his ability to gather information. Frederick would often send his trusted agents to pose as servants, soldiers, or merchants in enemy camps. These spies would act like friends, gaining the trust of the enemy while secretly reporting back to Frederick. This information gave Frederick a crucial advantage in planning his military campaigns, as he always knew what his enemies were thinking and what their next moves would be. One of Frederick's most famous campaigns was against the Austrian Empire, where his spies had infiltrated the Austrian ranks. By gathering intelligence on the Austrians' battle plans and supply lines, Frederick was able to outmaneuver them, leading to several key victories. His ability to spy under the guise of friendship was one of the secrets to his military success. In today's world, this law can be applied in business, politics, and even social situations. By positioning yourself as a friend or ally, you can gain access to valuable information without raising suspicions. But be careful, spying is a double-edged sword. If you're caught, the consequences can be severe. Lesson: pose as a friend, but gather information like a spy. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better positioned you are to succeed. Law 15, crush your enemy totally. In any battle for power, the greatest mistake you can make is to leave an enemy alive or give them a chance to recover. If you allow your enemy to linger, they will eventually regroup and strike back. The only way to ensure victory is to crush them completely, leaving no room for retaliation. A prime historical example of this law is the fate of Hannibal, the brilliant Carthaginian general. Hannibal is best known for his daring attack on Rome during the Second Punic War. He led his army, including war elephants, across the Alps and wreaked havoc on the Roman Empire for years. Despite his tactical genius and numerous victories, Hannibal never dealt a final blow to Rome. His greatest mistake was not crushing his enemy totally when he had the chance. After years of fighting, Rome eventually recovered and regrouped. The Roman general Scipio Africanus took the fight to Hannibal's homeland, Carthage, and ultimately defeated him in the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. Rome's retaliation was swift and devastating, not just defeating Carthage but systematically destroying it to ensure it could never rise again. Carthage was obliterated, and Hannibal's mistake in not finishing Rome when he had the upper hand became a historical lesson in the importance of total victory. Even though this might sound extreme, the idea behind this law applies to many areas of life. Letting a problem or an enemy linger can come back to haunt you. For example, in business, if a competitor threatens your position, and you merely weaken them without eliminating their influence or ability to recover, they may come back stronger. This law isn't about physical destruction, it's about making sure your opposition has no chance to regain strength and fight you again. Lesson: crush your enemy totally. Do not allow them the opportunity to regroup and retaliate. Only complete and total domination ensures long-term success. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Sometimes the more you are seen, the less people appreciate you. Familiarity can breed contempt, and people often take for granted what is always available. To maintain power and influence, use strategic absence. When you are absent, you create a sense of mystery and increase the value of your presence. Take the story of Talleyrand, a French diplomat who served under Napoleon. Talleyrand was a master manipulator and knew the value of his presence. Early in his career, Talleyrand was a constant figure at Napoleon's side, advising him on matters of state. But over time, Napoleon began to take Talleyrand's counsel for granted and started to dismiss his ideas. Rather than fight for attention or remain visible at all times, Talleyrand strategically withdrew from the spotlight. His absence was felt almost immediately. Without his steady hand, Napoleon's decision-making became erratic, and the emperor's political and military missteps began to pile up. Napoleon realized the value of Talleyrand too late. His empire was already crumbling. By the time Napoleon sought to bring Talleyrand back into his inner circle, it was too late to salvage the situation. In contrast, Talleyrand's calculated absences only increased his reputation as a wise and indispensable statesman. His ability to retreat when needed made him even more respected and revered in the long run. In our own lives, we can apply this law by not always making ourselves too available. In relationships, work, or social situations, sometimes stepping back can make people appreciate you more. It's not about being aloof, but about creating moments where your absence is felt and your presence becomes more valuable when you return. Lesson: use strategic absence to increase respect and honor. People often value what they miss more than what is constantly available. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Unpredictability can be one of your greatest assets in the game of power. When people cannot predict your next move, they become anxious and unsure of how to act. By keeping others in a state of suspense, you maintain the upper hand and control the narrative. One of the most dramatic examples of unpredictability comes from the life of Genghis Khan, the Mongol leader who built one of the largest empires in history. Genghis Khan was notorious for his ruthless and unpredictable tactics on the battlefield. He would attack swiftly and brutally in some cases, while in others he would appear to retreat, only to circle back and launch a surprise assault. In one famous instance, Genghis Khan laid siege to the city of Nishapur. The city had prepared for his attack, expecting a traditional Mongol assault. But Genghis Khan did something unexpected. He ordered his army to retreat. The defenders of Nishapur thought they had won and celebrated their victory. However, Genghis Khan's retreat was a ruse. His army returned a few days later, catching the city completely off guard and utterly destroying it. Genghis Khan's unpredictability made him a fearsome leader, as his enemies could never anticipate his next move. His reputation for unpredictability was often enough to make opposing armies surrender without a fight. In everyday life, unpredictability can also work in your favor. If people can always predict how you will react or behave, they can manipulate or control you. But by being a bit unpredictable, you keep others on their toes, unsure of how to handle you. Lesson: cultivate unpredictability to keep others in suspense. When people cannot predict your actions, they cannot control or manipulate you. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. While it might seem tempting to isolate yourself from danger, it often backfires. Isolation cuts you off from valuable information, allies, and influence. In the game of power, it's far more dangerous to hide behind walls than to stay engaged with the world around you. In ancient China, one of the most well-known stories of this law comes from the Qin dynasty. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, is famous for building the Great Wall of China. His goal was to protect his empire from the constant threat of invasions from the northern tribes. However, despite the wall's size and complexity, it was not impenetrable, and the emperor's attempts to isolate China behind its walls eventually contributed to his downfall. By focusing too much on isolation, Emperor Qin Shi Huang lost touch with his people and his enemies' strategies. The northern tribes eventually found ways to bypass the wall, and internal unrest weakened the emperor's grip on power. His isolation made him blind to the realities of his own empire, and after his death, his dynasty quickly collapsed. In a more modern sense, this law speaks to the dangers of cutting yourself off from important connections, whether in business or personal life. When you retreat into isolation, you miss out on vital information and opportunities. Staying engaged with others, even in times of conflict, allows you to gather intelligence, forge alliances, and remain flexible in your approach. Lesson: do not isolate yourself behind walls, whether literal or metaphorical. Isolation leaves you vulnerable. Instead, stay connected and engaged to maintain influence and power. Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. One of the quickest ways to lose power is to offend someone without understanding who they truly are. Some people are more dangerous than they appear, and a careless insult or slight can have long-lasting consequences. Always assess the people around you carefully, and avoid making enemies of those who could harm you. A famous example of this law in action comes from the court of Queen Elizabeth I of England. Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, was a young and ambitious nobleman who sought to rise in the Queen's favor. However, Essex was impulsive and often failed to recognize the dangers of offending powerful people at court. One of Essex's most significant mistakes was his treatment of Queen Elizabeth herself. Believing that his charm and past service had secured his position, Essex became increasingly bold in his interactions with the Queen. In one heated argument, he even turned his back on her, a grave insult in royal protocol. Elizabeth, a ruler known for her political acumen, was deeply offended by Essex's behavior, rather than confronting him directly. She allowed him to continue his reckless ways until he made one final misstep, attempting a coup against her rule. The coup failed, and Essex was executed, all because he had underestimated the Queen's power and offended the wrong person. In everyday life, it's crucial to recognize who holds influence and power in any situation. Whether in the workplace, in social circles, or even in personal relationships, offending the wrong person can have serious consequences. Before you act, always consider the potential impact of your words and actions on those around you. Lesson: know who you're dealing with and avoid offending the wrong people. Underestimating someone's power can lead to your downfall. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone, stay independent. One of the smartest strategies in the pursuit of power is to maintain your independence. By not committing to any one person or group, you preserve your freedom to maneuver, aligning yourself with whoever offers the best opportunity. The moment you tie yourself down, you limit your options and become vulnerable to exploitation. A vivid example of this law comes from the Italian Renaissance, a time of political intrigue and shifting alliances. Cesare Borgia, a ruthless and ambitious leader, understood the importance of staying independent. Rather than committing to any one faction in Italy's constantly changing political landscape, Borgia kept his options open, playing one side against the other. Borgia's father, Pope Alexander VI, made him a powerful figure in the Papal States, but Borgia knew that his father's power would not last forever. So, instead of relying solely on his father's influence, Borgia made alliances with various noble families, mercenaries, and foreign powers. By refusing to commit fully to any of them, he retained the ability to switch sides and adjust his strategy based on the shifting political winds. However, after his father's death, Borgia found himself isolated because he had not cultivated any deep loyalties. His enemies pounced, and he was eventually defeated. The lesson here is not just to stay independent, but also to balance your independence with building key relationships that you can rely on when needed. In everyday life, this law can be applied in many ways. Whether in business or personal matters, committing to one group or person too soon can limit your choices. By keeping your options open, you maintain flexibility and can adapt to changing circumstances. People often respect those who are not tied down because it signals that you are valuable and in demand. Lesson: stay independent and avoid committing to anyone. Independence gives you the freedom to maneuver and adapt to changing situations. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. Appearing smarter than everyone else might seem like a winning strategy, but it often backfires. People don't like feeling outsmarted, and they tend to avoid or resent those who make them feel inferior. The key to power, instead, is to play the fool and let others believe they have the upper hand. When they let their guard down, you gain the advantage. An example of this law in action comes from one of the most famous cons in history, carried out by Victor Lustig, a legendary con artist. Lustig is best known for selling the Eiffel Tower twice. His genius lay in how he approached his marks. Rather than coming across as overly slick or smart, Lustig played the part of a slightly clueless bureaucrat, which made his targets feel comfortable. In 1925, Lustig convinced several scrap metal dealers that the French government was planning to demolish the Eiffel Tower, and that he had been put in charge of selling it for scrap. By playing the role of a bumbling official who was eager to get the deal done quickly, Lustig made his victims feel like they were the ones taking advantage of him. Little did they know, they were being outsmarted by someone who appeared less intelligent than them. This law can be applied in everyday life, especially in competitive environments. When you let others think they are in control or more intelligent, they drop their defenses. This gives you the chance to gather valuable information, exploit weaknesses, or position yourself for victory. Appearing smarter than everyone else can put a target on your back. By seeming harmless or even slightly less capable, you allow others to underestimate you, which works to your advantage. Lesson: seem dumber than your mark to catch them off guard. When others think they are smarter than you, they will make mistakes you can exploit. Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Turn weakness into power. In the struggle for power, there are times when fighting back will only lead to disaster. In such moments, surrender can be your best option. By giving in, you avoid immediate defeat and gain time to regroup and position yourself for future success. This tactic is not about giving up, but about turning a moment of weakness into an opportunity for long-term power. A classic example of this law comes from the story of the Roman general Fabius Maximus. During the Second Punic War, Rome was facing the unstoppable military genius of Hannibal. Instead of meeting Hannibal head-on in battle, where the Romans had already suffered devastating losses, Fabius adopted a strategy of delay. He avoided direct confrontation, constantly retreating and refusing to engage Hannibal in open battle. Many Romans criticized Fabius for what they saw as cowardice, but his strategy of surrendering small battles ultimately worked. Hannibal's forces grew frustrated and overextended, while Fabius's army remained intact. Over time, Fabius's patience paid off as Hannibal's resources dwindled, and Rome was able to turn the tide of the war. The lesson here is that sometimes, surrendering in the short term is the smartest path to long-term victory. In personal or professional conflicts, fighting every battle can leave you exhausted and vulnerable. Instead, by retreating or conceding at the right moments, you can preserve your energy and resources for a more decisive victory later on. Lesson: surrender when it is strategically advantageous. Sometimes, the best way to win is to lose in the short term and regroup for a future victory. Law 23. Concentrate your forces. In the pursuit of power, it's essential to focus your resources and energy on a single point, rather than spreading yourself too thin. By concentrating your efforts, you can achieve much more than if you try to take on too many challenges at once. One of the most iconic examples of concentrated power comes from the military genius of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon understood that to win a battle, it wasn't enough to just have a large army. He believed in focusing his forces on a single decisive point, breaking through enemy lines and creating chaos. His strategy of concentration allowed him to defeat much larger armies by overwhelming them at their weakest point. In one of his most famous campaigns, the Battle of Austerlitz, Napoleon faced the combined forces of Russia and Austria. Outnumbered and seemingly at a disadvantage, Napoleon concentrated his forces on a weak point in the enemy's lines. By focusing all his energy on one spot, he shattered the enemy's defenses and achieved a stunning victory, which became known as one of his greatest triumphs. This law can be applied to many areas of life, not just military strategy. In business, it's better to focus on mastering one area rather than trying to do everything at once. In personal development, concentrating on improving a single skill can yield far better results than spreading your efforts across multiple areas. Lesson: focus your energy on one decisive point. By concentrating your forces, you can achieve a level of success that would be impossible if you spread yourself too thin. Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. The game of power is often played in subtle, indirect ways, especially in environments like courts or workplaces where overt power plays are frowned upon. To navigate these environments successfully, you must master the art of being a perfect courtier, someone who can charm, flatter, and manipulate without being obvious. One of the most skilled courtiers in history was Louis XIV's court favorite, Nicolas Fouquet. Fouquet was a master of charm and social grace, and he understood that power at court wasn't just about military or political strength. It was about being able to win over those around you. Fouquet hosted extravagant parties, flattered the right people, and always knew how to present himself as indispensable to the king. For a time, he enjoyed immense power and wealth, becoming one of the most influential men in France. But Fouquet's success was also his downfall. He overplayed his hand by throwing an incredibly lavish party for Louis XIV, which made the king feel overshadowed and threatened. As a result, Fouquet was arrested, and his rise to power came to an abrupt end. The lesson from Fouquet's story is that while charm and courtly behavior can bring great success, they must be used with caution. The perfect courtier knows how to balance flattery and manipulation without making themselves too visible or powerful, lest they arouse jealousy. In modern life, the role of the courtier can be seen in workplace dynamics. Knowing how to navigate office politics, when to flatter, and how to make yourself valuable without appearing threatening are key skills in maintaining and growing your influence. Lesson: master the art of subtle influence. Charm, flatter, and manipulate without being too obvious, and always be aware of the power dynamics at play. Law 25. Recreate yourself. The most powerful people in history understood that to achieve greatness, you must constantly reinvent yourself. Life changes, circumstances shift, and by adapting to these changes, you ensure that you remain relevant and strong. This law is about embracing the power of transformation, not just once, but as an ongoing process. Let's dive into the story of Julius Caesar, one of the most famous figures of the Roman Empire. Caesar was not born into power, and his early life was full of struggles. But Caesar was ambitious, and he knew that if he wanted to achieve his goals, he had to constantly recreate himself. He went from being a young man with little influence to a political powerhouse. But even after becoming a prominent figure in Roman politics, Caesar didn't stop. He continued to adapt and evolve, eventually positioning himself as the ruler of Rome. In one famous instance, after being captured by pirates early in his career, Caesar turned the tables on his captors. The pirates demanded a ransom for his release, and while Caesar waited for the money to be paid, he charmed them by treating them as equals. But when he was freed, Caesar hunted them down, captured them, and had them crucified, just as he had promised he would. This wasn't just an act of revenge, it was a signal to the world that Caesar was a man who should be taken seriously. He had reinvented himself from a mere politician into a leader capable of commanding fear and respect. This law is powerful because it applies to everyone, not just historical figures like Caesar. In your own life, you might find yourself stuck in a rut or dealing with changes that are outside of your control. But by actively seeking opportunities to reinvent yourself, you maintain power over your own destiny. Whether it's learning new skills, adopting a new mindset, or even changing your appearance, you can use this law to take control of how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Lesson: don't be afraid to shed your old skin and recreate yourself when necessary. Those who adapt and evolve survive and thrive in changing circumstances. Law 26. Keep your hands clean. To maintain power, you must always present yourself as virtuous and morally upstanding. The best way to do this is to keep your hands clean. In the world of power dynamics, being associated with dirty deeds can tarnish your reputation and diminish your authority. To thrive, learn to delegate the dirty work to others, ensuring that you remain above reproach. Let's take the example of Cardinal Richelieu, one of the most formidable political figures in French history. As the chief minister to King Louis XIII, Richelieu wielded immense power, but he was also a man of cunning and subtlety. When he wanted to eliminate rivals or deal with those who threatened his authority, he didn't act directly. Instead, he crafted elaborate schemes, using intermediaries to do the dirty work while maintaining his pristine image. Richelieu had a rival named Gaston, Duke of Orleans, who sought to undermine him. Rather than confronting Gaston head-on, Richelieu hatched a plot to discredit him. He secretly spread rumors about Gaston's supposed treachery, convincing the king to view his own brother with suspicion. When Gaston was eventually arrested, Richelieu emerged unscathed. He had orchestrated the entire affair without sullying his own reputation. In contemporary contexts, consider how this law plays out in corporate settings. When a scandal arises, leaders often step back and allow their subordinates to take the heat. This strategy protects their standing while also sending a clear message that they are above reproach. Think of a CEO who may know about unethical practices within their company, but distances themselves from the fallout by blaming lower-level employees or departments. By keeping their hands clean, they maintain authority and credibility. This law isn't just about manipulation, it also involves being strategic in how you manage perceptions. Whether in your personal or professional life, you can apply this principle by ensuring that your actions reflect positively on you, even if the reality is more complex. Always find ways to ensure that if things go wrong, the blame doesn't land on you. Lesson: always find ways to distance yourself from controversy and wrongdoing. By keeping your hands clean, you protect your reputation and remain above reproach. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. Humans are inherently social creatures with a deep need to believe in something greater than themselves. This law highlights the power of belief and how you can use it to cultivate a devoted following. When you tap into this need, you can inspire unwavering loyalty and commitment from others, creating a sense of belonging and purpose. Let's explore the story of Jim Jones, the infamous leader of the People's Temple. Jones was a master manipulator who understood the emotional and psychological needs of his followers. He painted himself as a messianic figure, promising salvation and community at a time when many people felt lost and disenfranchised. His charisma was magnetic, drawing in individuals who were seeking meaning and connection in their lives. In the beginning, the People's Temple appeared to be a progressive movement promoting social justice and equality. Jones skillfully curated a narrative that emphasized love, unity, and support for marginalized communities. His followers, many of whom were struggling with personal challenges, found solace and purpose in his vision. They believed they were part of a righteous cause, a movement that would change the world. As Jones gained power, he manipulated his followers further, creating an isolated community in Guyana known as Jonestown. He restricted their access to outside information, instilling fear and distrust of the outside world. To strengthen their bond, he encouraged communal living and collective decision-making, reinforcing the idea that they were a family united by a common purpose. However, the reality behind Jones's facade was dark. He used psychological manipulation, fear, and even violence to control his followers. In a chilling climax, when faced with the possibility of losing control, Jones orchestrated a mass suicide that led to the deaths of over 900 people. This tragic event serves as a stark reminder of how powerful leaders can exploit human needs and vulnerabilities. In your own life, consider how you can inspire belief and loyalty among your peers or team members. Whether you're leading a project at work organizing a community group, or rallying friends around a cause, presenting a compelling vision can create a strong sense of connection. By fostering an environment where people feel valued and part of something bigger, you can motivate them to contribute their best efforts. Lesson: people have a deep need to believe in something. By tapping into this need, you can build a loyal following that will support you unconditionally. Law 28, enter action with boldness. Timidity is a deadly sin in the pursuit of power. When you hesitate or act with uncertainty, you project weakness, and people will take advantage of that. Boldness commands respect and attention, and it can often turn the tide in your favor. The world rewards those who act decisively and with confidence. A compelling example of this law can be found in the life of Hernán Cortés, the Spanish conquistador who is best known for his role in the fall of the Aztec Empire. When Cortés arrived in the New World, he faced incredible odds. He was vastly outnumbered, and had to navigate a foreign land filled with powerful enemies. Rather than retreating or showing hesitation, he made a bold decision that would change the course of history. He burned his own ships. This dramatic act sent a clear message to his men. There was no turning back. They had to either conquer the land or face certain death. This display of boldness not only rallied his troops but also struck fear into the hearts of the Aztecs, who saw Cortés as a man willing to take extreme risks. With no means of retreat, Cortés led his men to victory against the Aztec Empire, ultimately seizing their wealth and power. Cortés's audacity exemplifies how boldness can create momentum. When you act decisively, you inspire those around you to follow your lead. Bold actions can lead to unforeseen opportunities, opening doors that would otherwise remain closed. Whether in your career, relationships, or personal projects, taking risks and showing confidence can propel you forward. Consider how you can implement this law in your own life. Are there decisions you've been avoiding out of fear? What bold steps can you take to move forward? By embracing the mindset of decisiveness and courage, you can create positive change in your life and inspire others to join you. Lesson: enter action with boldness. When you act decisively and confidently, you inspire others and create momentum that can lead to success. Law 29, plan all the way to the end. To achieve lasting power, you must have a clear vision of your goals and the ability to plan for every eventuality. This law emphasizes the importance of thinking through every step of your journey, considering potential obstacles, and preparing for them in advance. By anticipating challenges, you maintain control over your destiny. A prime example of this law can be seen in the life of Otto von Bismarck, the German statesman known for his role in the unification of Germany. Bismarck was a strategic mastermind who always kept his long-term goals in mind. His ambition was to unify the German states under Prussian leadership, and he understood that achieving this would require careful planning and manipulation of political forces. Bismarck's approach was methodical. He carefully orchestrated a series of wars against Denmark, Austria, and France, but he didn't enter these conflicts blindly. He anticipated how each war would play out and used the outcomes to his advantage. For instance, after defeating Denmark, he used the victory to gain support from the German states, further isolating Austria. His strategic foresight allowed him to emerge victorious, ultimately leading to the unification of Germany in 1871. In your own life, failing to plan can lead to unintended consequences. Whether you're pursuing a career goal, starting a new project, or navigating a personal challenge, it's vital to think through every possible outcome. By anticipating potential roadblocks and preparing for them in advance, you can avoid setbacks and keep your momentum. Ask yourself, what are your long-term goals? How can you break them down into actionable steps? By planning meticulously and considering every angle, you can navigate challenges and increase your chances of success. Lesson: plan all the way to the end. By thinking several steps ahead, you can avoid surprises and maintain control over your own destiny. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. In the game of power, perception is everything. When you present your accomplishments as effortless, you project an image of confidence and mastery. People admire those who achieve great things with apparent ease, as it suggests that they are in complete control of their circumstances. One of history's most notable figures who embodied this law was King Louis XIV of France, often referred to as the Sun King. Louis understood the importance of image, and dedicated his reign to cultivating an aura of effortless superiority. He held elaborate court ceremonies where every gesture and movement was meticulously planned, reinforcing the idea that he was a godlike figure above the mundane concerns of ordinary life. Behind the scenes, however, Louis worked tirelessly. He was deeply involved in matters of governance, diplomacy, and military strategy, but he ensured that this hard work was hidden from public view. When things went well, he took the credit, and when challenges arose, he expertly deflected blame, maintaining the illusion of effortless power. Louis's ability to make his rule seem effortless played a significant role in securing his authority. His court was filled with intrigue, and everyone sought his favor, reinforcing the belief that he was a man of destiny, effortlessly guiding France to greatness. This image of effortless power became part of the French identity, contributing to the glorification of monarchy in Europe. In your life, consider how you can apply this law to your achievements. When you complete a project or overcome a challenge, present your success as a natural outcome of your talents and abilities. Share your accomplishments in a way that highlights your mastery rather than the hard work that went into them. By creating the perception of ease, you can enhance your reputation and inspire others to see you as a leader. Lesson: make your accomplishments seem effortless. By presenting your success as a natural extension of your abilities, you cultivate admiration and respect. Law 31. Control the options, get others to play with the cards you deal. In the pursuit of power, the ability to control choices is paramount. By managing the options available to others, you position yourself to maintain control over the situation. This law teaches you to shape circumstances in a way that benefits you, while still making others feel they have a say in the matter. Consider the strategic maneuvering of the American diplomat Henry Kissinger during the Cold War. Kissinger was adept at creating options that allowed him to guide foreign leaders while giving the illusion of autonomy. When negotiating with adversaries, he often presented them with choices that led to outcomes aligned with American interests, all while making it appear that they were making independent decisions. For example, during the détente era, Kissinger skillfully managed U.S.-Soviet relations by proposing arms control agreements. He would present the Soviets with options that seemed favorable, but ultimately benefited the U.S. more. By framing the choices in a way that aligned with both nations' interests, he was able to secure agreements that strengthened America's position, while allowing Soviet leaders to save face. This principle can also be observed in marketing strategies. Businesses often present consumers with limited choices that guide their decisions. By offering curated options, companies can create an environment where customers feel empowered, yet they are still making choices that favor the business's objectives. In your own life, think about how you can apply this law to your interactions. When negotiating, whether in a personal or professional context, frame the choices available to others in a way that aligns with your goals. By controlling the narrative and the options presented, you can steer outcomes in your favor while allowing others to feel they have agency. Lesson: control the options available to others. By managing the choices presented, you can direct outcomes while giving the illusion of freedom. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. People often prefer illusions and fantasies over harsh realities. This law highlights the power of escapism and the allure of dreams. By tapping into the fantasies of others, you can captivate and manipulate them, creating a powerful influence over their thoughts and actions. A powerful historical figure who understood this law was P.T. Barnum, the renowned circus promoter and showman. Barnum was a master at playing to the public's fantasies, creating spectacles that captivated audiences and drew them into his world. He knew that people craved entertainment and wonder, so he delivered it in grand fashion. Barnum's famous phrase, "There's a sucker born every minute," reflects his understanding of human nature. He created outrageous exhibits and attractions, from the Fiji mermaid to the greatest show on earth, all designed to stimulate the imagination. Barnum didn't just present his shows, he wove elaborate narratives around them, making them feel larger than life. His marketing genius lay in creating an emotional connection with his audience. Barnum understood that people yearned for excitement and novelty, and he delivered it with flair. He played to their fantasies of adventure, awe, and entertainment, transforming his circus into a cultural phenomenon. In contemporary contexts, consider how politicians and advertisers often leverage this principle. Political campaigns frequently focus on idealistic visions for the future, presenting candidates as harbingers of change and hope. Similarly, advertisements create fantasies around products, suggesting that they can fulfill desires or improve lives in meaningful ways. In your own life, reflect on how you can appeal to the fantasies of those around you. Whether in your personal relationships, career, or creative endeavors, consider what dreams and aspirations people hold. By aligning your message or actions with their desires, you can build strong connections and influence their decisions. Lesson: play to people's fantasies. By appealing to their dreams and desires, you can capture their attention and loyalty. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Every person has a vulnerability, a weakness that can be exploited. This law teaches you to identify and understand the weaknesses of others, which can provide you with leverage in your interactions. By discovering their thumbscrew, you can manipulate situations to your advantage. A notable historical example is Niccolò Machiavelli, the political philosopher known for his ruthless strategies. Machiavelli understood that to maintain power, leaders must be aware of their opponent's weaknesses. He advised rulers to study their rivals closely, looking for vulnerabilities they could exploit. Machiavelli illustrated this principle through the story of Cesare Borgia, a notorious leader in Renaissance Italy. Borgia faced challenges in securing his rule, particularly from rival factions. He understood that one of his enemies, Ramiro de Orco, was feared and hated by the people. Instead of attempting to eliminate Ramiro outright, Borgia made a strategic decision. He eliminated him, but did so in a way that portrayed himself as a savior to the populace. By discovering the people's disdain for Ramiro and then eliminating him, Borgia not only neutralized a threat, but also enhanced his own standing among the people. He manipulated their emotions and perceptions, turning a potential weakness into a source of strength. In modern settings, consider how this principle applies in negotiations and leadership. By understanding the fears, insecurities, and desires of your colleagues, you can craft your approach to achieve your objectives. Whether you're navigating a workplace dynamic or building a team, discovering the vulnerabilities of others allows you to adapt your strategy for maximum impact. Lesson: identify the vulnerabilities of those around you. By understanding their weaknesses, you can navigate situations to your advantage. Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion, act like a king to be treated like one. Your self-perception directly influences how others perceive you. This law emphasizes the importance of projecting confidence, dignity, and self-worth. By acting as though you are deserving of respect and admiration, you will command it from others. A compelling example of this law can be found in the life of Queen Elizabeth I of England. Elizabeth understood the significance of her royal image, and carefully crafted her persona to inspire loyalty and admiration among her subjects. Despite facing numerous challenges, including threats to her reign and societal expectations as a woman in power, Elizabeth projected an air of authority and confidence. She famously declared, "I am the Majesty," reinforcing her royal status. Elizabeth adorned herself in elaborate garments, surrounded herself with advisors, and made public appearances that showcased her power. By embodying the qualities of a ruler, she commanded respect from her courtiers and subjects alike. This principle applies not only to royalty, but to anyone seeking to establish authority. In your own life, consider how you present yourself. Do you carry yourself with confidence? Do you speak and act in ways that reflect your worth? By embracing your own authority and treating yourself with respect, you encourage others to do the same. In professional settings, this law can be particularly impactful. When you take pride in your work, dress appropriately for your role, and express your ideas with conviction, you elevate your standing in the eyes of your colleagues. By acting like a leader, you can inspire confidence and foster a sense of respect among your peers. Lesson: act like a king or queen in your own life. By embodying confidence and dignity, you will be treated with respect and authority. Law 35. Master the art of timing. In the dance of power, timing is everything. This law teaches you the importance of patience and the ability to seize opportunities at the right moment. Mastering the art of timing allows you to navigate challenges and make strategic moves that yield maximum benefits. A historical figure who exemplified this principle is Franklin D. Roosevelt. During his presidency, Roosevelt faced immense challenges, including the Great Depression and World War II. However, he understood that timing could be pivotal in shaping public opinion and policy. When the economy was at its lowest, Roosevelt implemented the New Deal, a series of programs aimed at revitalizing the economy. He timed the introduction of these initiatives strategically, delivering his messages through fireside chats that connected with the American people. By choosing the right moments to address the nation, he instilled hope and confidence, rallying support for his policies. Similarly, Roosevelt's approach to foreign policy during World War II reflected his understanding of timing. He recognized that entering the war at the right moment was crucial. Rather than rushing into conflict, he carefully monitored international developments and chose to act when the United States was prepared to engage fully. In your own life, think about how you can apply this law. Are there opportunities you've been waiting for? Are there times when you've rushed into decisions without considering the right moment? Mastering timing requires patience, observation, and strategic planning. By being aware of the environment and the dynamics at play, you can position yourself to make impactful moves. Lesson: master the art of timing. Be patient and observant, and seize opportunities when the moment is right. Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. In the realm of power, there are times when certain desires or ambitions are unattainable. This law teaches you that when faced with such situations, the best course of action is to disdain what you cannot have. By ignoring those desires, you assert your power and demonstrate that you are not defined by your unfulfilled aspirations. A historical example of this principle can be seen in the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. After his defeat and subsequent exile to Elba, Napoleon faced the harsh reality of losing his empire. However, rather than wallowing in despair, he chose to disregard the limitations of his situation. When he escaped from Elba and returned to France, he displayed an air of indifference toward the powerful coalition that sought to contain him. By downplaying the significance of their efforts and framing his return as a triumphant comeback, he captured the imagination of the French people who rallied behind him once again. This principle also applies to personal relationships. When someone rejects or dismisses you, responding with disdain can reclaim your power. Instead of seeking validation or attention, focus on your own worth and move on. This behavior signals to others that you will not be diminished by their actions. In professional settings, consider how this law can apply to your career. If you are passed over for a promotion or face criticism, maintain your composure. Rather than dwelling on what you cannot attain, focus on your strengths and the opportunities available to you. By adopting a mindset of indifference, you can redirect your energy toward positive pursuits. Lesson: disdain what you cannot have. By ignoring unfulfilled desires, you reclaim your power and assert your worth. Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Throughout history, powerful figures have understood the importance of spectacle in capturing attention and solidifying their influence. This law emphasizes the value of creating memorable experiences that leave a lasting impact on others. By crafting compelling spectacles, you can shape perceptions and inspire loyalty. A prime example of this principle is found in the reign of Louis XIV of France, often referred to as the Sun King. Louis understood that the grandeur of his court was essential to maintaining his power. He hosted elaborate ceremonies such as the opulent court ballets and the construction of the Palace of Versailles, which became symbols of his authority. The grandeur of Versailles was not just a testament to wealth, it was a carefully orchestrated spectacle designed to impress both his subjects and foreign dignitaries. By surrounding himself with luxury and elegance, Louis XIV created an aura of majesty that reinforced his status as a ruler. The gardens, fountains, and artwork served to communicate his power and influence. In modern contexts, consider how this principle applies in various fields. Political leaders often stage rallies and public events to galvanize support, creating spectacles that inspire emotions and loyalty among their followers. Brands utilize marketing campaigns that evoke strong feelings, crafting memorable experiences that resonate with consumers. In your own life, think about how you can create compelling spectacles. Whether in your personal brand, workplace initiatives, or community events, consider how to present your ideas in a way that captures attention and engages others. By infusing creativity and spectacle into your endeavors, you can inspire action and build lasting connections. Lesson: create compelling spectacles. By crafting memorable experiences, you can capture attention and influence perceptions. Law 38. Think as you like but behave like others. While individual thought is essential, social acceptance often requires conformity to certain norms and behaviors. This law teaches you the importance of blending in and adapting to social contexts while maintaining your personal beliefs. By behaving like others, you can navigate social dynamics more effectively. A historical example of this principle is Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States. Jefferson was a proponent of individual liberties and Enlightenment ideals, yet he understood the necessity of conforming to societal expectations to maintain his political influence. While he championed progressive ideas, he also recognized the need to align with the values of his contemporaries. For instance, during his presidency, Jefferson often adopted the style of the gentry, hosting formal gatherings and adhering to the customs of the time. By blending in with the elite class, he was able to cultivate alliances and further his political agenda. This behavior demonstrated that he could navigate both progressive and conservative spaces, enhancing his effectiveness as a leader. In your own life, consider how you can apply this law. While it's important to hold on to your beliefs, adapting your behavior in social situations can foster better relationships. By understanding the norms and values of the environment you're in, you can create connections while still retaining your individuality. This principle also applies to workplace dynamics. When collaborating with colleagues, being aware of the established culture can facilitate smoother interactions. By adapting your behavior to fit the team, you can enhance cooperation and collaboration while still contributing your unique perspective. Lesson: think as you like, but behave like others. By adapting your behavior to social norms, you can navigate interactions more effectively. Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. In the realm of power dynamics, chaos can be a potent tool. This law highlights the strategic value of creating confusion or turbulence to gain an advantage. By stirring the waters, you can disorient your opponents, making it easier to manipulate situations in your favor. A notable historical figure who exemplified this principle is Otto von Bismarck, the architect of German unification. Bismarck was known for his cunning and strategic maneuvers. He understood that creating instability among his rivals could yield opportunities for Germany. During the 1870s, Bismarck orchestrated a series of diplomatic crises, including the EMS dispatch, which ultimately led to the Franco-Prussian War. By manipulating the media and public sentiment, he stirred up tensions between France and Germany, successfully rallying German states to unite against a common enemy. Bismarck's strategy demonstrated that by creating discord, he could galvanize support for his agenda. The ensuing conflict ultimately led to the unification of Germany, solidifying Bismarck's legacy as a master of political maneuvering. In your own life, consider how this law applies to strategic positioning. In negotiations or competitive environments, sometimes creating uncertainty can work to your advantage. By introducing a degree of chaos, you may force opponents to react impulsively, allowing you to capitalize on their missteps. However, exercise caution with this approach. Stirring up chaos can backfire if not executed thoughtfully. It's essential to maintain a clear vision of your objectives and to navigate the resulting turbulence with care. Lesson: stir up waters to create opportunities. By introducing chaos strategically, you can manipulate situations in your favor. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. In the realm of power, reliance on what is freely given can be a double-edged sword. This law teaches that accepting free gifts or favors can lead to dependency or compromise. By cultivating a mindset that values earned rewards, you enhance your power and autonomy. A historical example is the reign of Queen Elizabeth I of England. Elizabeth understood the importance of maintaining her independence and power. Throughout her reign, she was often offered favors and gifts from foreign leaders and nobles. However, she recognized that accepting such offerings could come with strings attached. Instead of relying on handouts, Elizabeth fostered alliances based on mutual respect and shared interests. She crafted strategic partnerships that strengthened her position without compromising her autonomy. By valuing what was earned rather than freely given, she maintained control over her reign. This principle applies to personal and professional relationships. When you rely on others for favors or assistance, you may inadvertently give them leverage over you. By pursuing goals independently and valuing your contributions, you assert your worth and minimize dependency. In your own life, reflect on how you approach opportunities. Are you tempted by offers that seem too good to be true? By fostering a mindset of earning your achievements, you build resilience and self-sufficiency. Lesson: despise the free lunch. Value what is earned, as it enhances your autonomy and power. Law 41: avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. When assuming a position of power or leadership, the burden of expectation can be overwhelming. This law advises against directly succeeding a great leader or trying to fill their shoes. Instead, carve your own path and establish your unique identity to avoid the pitfalls of comparison. A compelling example of this principle is found in the transition from President George Washington to his successors. Washington, revered as the father of his country, set an extraordinarily high standard for leadership. His presidency was marked by integrity and a commitment to democratic principles. When John Adams succeeded Washington, he faced immense pressure to live up to his predecessor's legacy. The expectation that he would embody the same virtues created challenges for Adams, who had his own vision for the presidency. Rather than attempting to mirror Washington, Adams focused on his own beliefs and priorities, emphasizing a strong federal government and foreign diplomacy. Adams' presidency showcased the importance of establishing one's identity rather than trying to replicate the successes of great leaders. By defining his own path, he navigated the complexities of governance while avoiding the pitfalls of comparison. In your life, consider how this principle applies to your career or personal endeavors. Whether stepping into a new role or facing comparisons to predecessors, focus on your strengths and vision. Embrace your individuality and define your journey, rather than attempting to conform to the expectations set by others. Lesson: avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Establish your own identity and path to navigate challenges effectively. Law 42: strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. In the realm of power, targeting key figures can disrupt the entire system. This law teaches you that by eliminating influential leaders or figures, you can weaken their followers and diminish their power. By striking at the source of influence, you create opportunities for your advancement. A historical figure who exemplified this principle is Julius Caesar. During his rise to power, Caesar faced numerous adversaries in the Roman Senate, including Pompey. Understanding that eliminating key rivals could consolidate his influence, he took decisive action. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, defying the Senate's orders and initiating a civil war. By directly confronting Pompey and his supporters, Caesar struck at the heart of opposition. The resulting chaos among Pompey's followers allowed Caesar to emerge as the uncontested leader of Rome. This principle applies not only in politics but also in various aspects of life. In business, identifying and addressing key decision-makers within an organization can shift power dynamics. By influencing or sidelining those in influential positions, you can create openings for your ideas or initiatives to gain traction. In your own life, consider how this law applies to your interactions. When faced with resistance, identify the key influencers and consider strategies to mitigate their power. However, be cautious. This approach can lead to backlash if not executed strategically. Lesson: strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Target key figures to disrupt systems and create opportunities for advancement. Law 43: work on the hearts and minds of others. Influencing others requires understanding their emotions and motivations. This law emphasizes the importance of appealing to the hearts and minds of those around you. By establishing emotional connections and fostering loyalty, you can effectively influence behavior and decisions. A historical example is Martin Luther King Jr. His leadership in the civil rights movement was characterized by his ability to inspire and connect with others on a deep emotional level. King understood that to effect change, he needed to resonate with the hearts of his followers. In his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, King articulated a vision of equality and justice that evoked powerful emotions. By appealing to shared values and aspirations, he galvanized support for the movement. His ability to connect with people on an emotional level inspired countless individuals to join the cause and work for change. In your own life, consider how you can apply this principle. When seeking to influence others, whether in personal relationships or professional settings, focus on understanding their emotions and motivations. By appealing to their values and aspirations, you can foster loyalty and inspire action. This approach is especially valuable in leadership. By connecting with your team on a personal level, you can cultivate trust and commitment, enhancing collaboration and productivity. Lesson: work on the hearts and minds of others. Appeal to emotions and motivations to influence behavior effectively. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. The mirror effect involves reflecting the behavior and attitudes of others to disarm or provoke them. This law teaches you that by mirroring others, you can unsettle them and gain an advantage. By creating discomfort or confusion, you can manipulate interactions to your benefit. A historical figure who employed this tactic effectively is Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military strategist. In his seminal work, The Art of War, Sun Tzu emphasized the importance of adaptability and deception. One strategy he advocated was mirroring the enemy's tactics to gain insight into their intentions. For instance, if an opponent employed aggression, mirroring that aggression could disarm them or provoke a reaction that exposes their weaknesses. By reflecting their behavior, you create uncertainty, allowing you to exploit opportunities for your advantage. In your life, consider how this principle can apply to interpersonal interactions. When faced with confrontational or aggressive behavior, responding with a mirrored reaction can disarm the situation. This technique can provoke introspection or confusion in the other party, shifting the dynamic in your favor. However, exercise caution with this approach. The mirror effect can backfire if not executed thoughtfully. Being overly aggressive or confrontational can escalate tensions, so it's essential to maintain control and awareness of the context. Lesson: disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. Reflect others' behavior to create discomfort and gain an advantage. Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Change is often met with resistance, making it crucial to approach reform carefully. This law advises advocating for change while recognizing the importance of gradual implementation. By introducing changes incrementally, you minimize resistance and foster acceptance. A historical example is Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. Upon taking office during the Great Depression, Roosevelt faced a dire economic situation. He understood the need for substantial reforms to revive the economy, but also recognized the necessity of gradual implementation to avoid backlash. Roosevelt introduced a series of programs and policies designed to address various economic challenges, such as job creation and financial regulation. By implementing reforms incrementally, he garnered support and gradually shifted public opinion. This approach allowed him to address the immediate crisis while laying the groundwork for more comprehensive changes. In your own life, consider how you can apply this principle. When advocating for change, whether in your workplace or personal life, focus on small, manageable steps. By introducing reforms gradually, you can build support and minimize resistance. This principle also applies to team dynamics. When leading a group, be mindful of the pace of change. Gradually introducing new ideas or processes fosters acceptance and encourages collaboration. Lesson: preach the need for change, but reform gradually. By implementing changes incrementally, you minimize resistance and foster acceptance. Law 46. Never appear too perfect. In the pursuit of power, appearing too perfect can breed envy and resentment. This law teaches you that embracing your imperfections and vulnerabilities can enhance your relatability and power. By allowing others to see your flaws, you foster connections and diminish jealousy. A compelling example is Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister during World War II. While he was revered for his leadership and oratory skills, he was not without flaws. Churchill openly acknowledged his struggles with depression, famously referring to it as his black dog. By sharing his vulnerabilities, Churchill connected with the public on a personal level. His willingness to show his imperfections humanized him, fostering loyalty and admiration among the British people. They recognized that he too faced challenges, making him a relatable and inspiring leader during a tumultuous time. In your own life, consider how this principle applies to your interactions. Strive for authenticity by acknowledging your flaws and challenges. This approach can foster deeper connections with others, as they may feel more comfortable sharing their vulnerabilities in return. In professional settings, demonstrating humility and openness can enhance your leadership. When team members see you as relatable, they are more likely to engage and collaborate, fostering a positive work environment. Lesson: never appear too perfect. Embrace your imperfections to enhance relatability and diminish envy. Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for in victory, learn when to stop. In the pursuit of goals, it's essential to recognize when to halt and consolidate your gains. This law advises against overreaching or pursuing further victories once you have achieved your objective. By understanding the limits of ambition, you preserve your power and avoid unnecessary pitfalls. A historical example of this principle is Alexander the Great. Alexander was known for his remarkable military conquests, stretching his empire across vast territories. However, during his campaign in India, he faced significant resistance and challenges. After achieving remarkable victories, including the Battle of the Hydaspes, Alexander's troops grew weary and reluctant to continue further into unfamiliar territory. Recognizing the limits of his army and the potential for overreach, he chose to halt his advance and consolidate his gains. This decision allowed him to secure his empire without risking unnecessary losses. In your own life, consider how this principle applies to your ambitions. When pursuing goals, remain mindful of your resources, energy, and external factors. Knowing when to stop can prevent burnout and maintain a sense of balance in your endeavors. In professional settings, recognizing when to halt projects or initiatives can lead to more effective resource management. By consolidating gains rather than pushing for excessive expansion, you preserve the value of your accomplishments. Lesson: do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, know when to stop to preserve your power and resources. Law 48: assume formlessness. In the world of power dynamics, adaptability is key. This law teaches you to embrace flexibility and formlessness as a means of navigating change and uncertainty. By remaining adaptable, you can respond effectively to evolving circumstances and maintain your influence. A historical figure who embodied this principle is Bruce Lee, the legendary martial artist. Lee famously stated, "Be water, my friend." He emphasized the importance of adaptability in martial arts, encouraging practitioners to flow like water rather than conform to rigid forms. Lee's approach to martial arts reflected a broader philosophy of life. He believed that adaptability allowed individuals to overcome challenges and seize opportunities. By remaining formless, you can respond to changing circumstances, whether in combat or daily life. In your own life, consider how this principle applies to your interactions and pursuits. Embrace a mindset of flexibility, allowing you to adapt to shifting situations. This approach fosters resilience and creativity, enabling you to navigate challenges more effectively. In professional settings, cultivating adaptability can enhance collaboration and problem-solving. When faced with obstacles, being open to new ideas and approaches fosters innovation and strengthens team dynamics. Lesson: assume formlessness. Embrace adaptability to navigate change and maintain influence in uncertain situations. Conclusion: embracing change for empowered leadership. As you reflect on the laws of power and their application in your life and leadership journey, it's essential to recognize that true influence stems from self-awareness and intentional action. Each principle serves as a guide, illuminating paths to enhance your effectiveness and foster meaningful connections with those around you. To harness the lessons learned and improve your leadership, consider taking the following key steps. Cultivate self-awareness. Regularly assess your strengths, weaknesses, and the dynamics within your team. Understanding how you are perceived can help you navigate power effectively. Build authentic relationships. Invest time in connecting with your team on a personal level. Listen actively, empathize with their challenges, and foster an environment of trust and collaboration. Embrace adaptability. Be open to change and remain flexible in your approach. The ability to pivot when circumstances shift is crucial for long-term success. Set clear goals. Define your objectives and communicate them clearly. Ensure that your team understands the vision and their role in achieving it, creating a unified sense of purpose. Recognize the value of incremental change. Advocate for gradual improvements within your organization. Small, manageable changes often yield greater acceptance and lead to lasting transformation. Celebrate achievements and learn from failures. Acknowledge both the successes and setbacks. Each experience offers valuable lessons that can guide future actions and decisions. Prioritize emotional intelligence. Work on understanding your emotions and those of others. Emotional intelligence is a powerful tool for influencing and motivating your team. By committing to these steps, you can cultivate a more impactful leadership style that not only drives success, but also inspires and empowers those around you. Remember, true leadership is about more than wielding power. It's about fostering a positive and transformative environment where everyone can thrive. Embrace these principles and watch as your leadership journey unfolds into a fulfilling and influential experience. Thank you for completing another BrevRead video. Like and subscribe to see more of our videos. If you have a particular book that you would like us to summarize, please share it in the comments section below.